My name is David Barnes, and I should have seen it coming. After 15 years of marriage, you'd think I'd recognize the signs. But sometimes the truth hits you like a sledgehammer to the gut, even when it's been tap dancing in front of your face for months. I'm a construction foreman. Nothing fancy, but honest work that pays the bills and keeps food on the table. My wife Sarah worked in marketing for a tech startup downtown, always dressed sharp, always talking about networking events and client dinners. I respected her ambition. Hell, I admired it. She was everything I wasn't: polished, articulate, comfortable in rooms full of people wearing suits that cost more than my monthly salary. The lies started small. Working late again, honey. Client meeting ran over. Girls' night with Melissa and Tracy. Standard stuff that every married couple deals with. But then the excuses got more elaborate, more detailed, like she was writing scripts in her head before calling me. Her favorite alibi became her parents. Robert and Linda Morrison lived clear across town in Riverside Heights, about 40 minutes in good traffic. Perfect distance for a believable excuse. Mom needs help with the computer again. Dad's having issues with the garage door. They want me to look at some old photo albums. At first, I bought it. Sarah had always been close with her folks, and they weren't getting any younger. Robert was 72, Linda was 68, and they'd raised Sarah to be the responsible daughter who drops everything to help family. It was one of the things I loved about her when we first met. But the frequency started bothering me. 3 times a week became 4. 4 became 5. And the timing was always convenient, right when I got home from work, right when we might have sat down for dinner together, right when we might have actually talked to each other like the married couple we were supposed to be. I'm not an idiot. I know what a cheating spouse looks like. I've seen enough of my crew go through divorces to recognize the warning signs. The sudden interest in appearance, the phone calls taken in other rooms, the way she'd shower immediately after coming home from these family visits. But Sarah was smart about it. She never slipped up on the details, never contradicted herself, never gave me anything concrete to grab onto, until the night I decided to test her. It was a Thursday in late October, one of those crisp autumn evenings when the leaves are turning and you can smell winter coming. I'd gotten home from the job site around 6, grabbed a beer, and was settling in to watch the game when my phone rang. "Hey, babe," Sarah's voice came through, slightly breathless. "I'm going to be late tonight. Mom called in a panic. Apparently the kitchen sink is backing up and there's water everywhere. I'm heading over there now." "That sucks," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Want me to come help? I've got my tools in the truck." No, don't worry about it. Dad already called a plumber, but you know how Mom gets when there's any kind of mess. I'll probably be there until 9 or 10, helping her clean up and making sure everything's okay." "All right, tell them I said hi." "Will do. Love you." "Love you too." I hung up and stared at the phone for a long moment. Then I did something I'd never done before in 15 years of marriage. I called her parents directly. "Hello?" Linda's cheerful voice answered on the second ring. "Hey, Linda. It's David. How are you folks doing?" "Oh, we're fine, dear. Just watching Jeopardy and arguing about the answers like always. How are you and Sarah?" My stomach dropped. "We're good. Actually, I was calling because Sarah mentioned you had some plumbing trouble. I wanted to see if you needed me to come take a look at anything." There was a pause. "Plumbing trouble?" "No, honey. Everything's working fine here. We haven't had any problems. Is Sarah not home yet?" I felt like I was falling down a very deep hole. "No, she said she was heading over to help you with a flooded kitchen." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear Robert in the background asking what was wrong. "David," Linda said carefully, "Sarah isn't here. We haven't seen her since last Sunday when you both came for dinner." I thanked Linda, made some excuse about Sarah probably stopping somewhere else first, and hung up. Then I sat in my living room, beer growing warm in my hand, staring at the wall and feeling like the world's biggest fool. That was the moment I knew for certain. Not suspected, not worried about, but knew with absolute clarity that my wife was cheating on me. The question was what to do about it. I could have confronted her that night when she came home at 10:47 p.m., hair perfect, makeup fresh, smelling like expensive perfume instead of cleaning supplies. I could have asked her about the mysterious plumbing emergency that never happened, but I didn't. Instead, I kissed her hello and asked how her parents were doing. "Oh, you know, Mom," she said with practiced ease. "Total drama queen about a little water on the floor, but we got it all cleaned up. Dad was useless, of course. Just stood there complaining about having to call a plumber on a Thursday night." She was good. I had to give her credit. The details rolled off her tongue like she'd actually lived them. If I hadn't called Linda myself, I would have believed every word. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention. The family emergency calls came like clockwork, always between 6 and 7 p.m., always requiring Sarah's immediate presence, always lasting 3 to 4 hours. I started keeping a mental log of her excuses. Mom's computer crashed and she needed help recovering photos. Dad fell off a ladder cleaning gutters and needed someone to drive him to urgent care, though he seemed fine when I saw him the following Sunday. The water heater was making strange noises. The garage door opener died. A tree branch fell on the roof during a storm. Each story was plausible on its own. Together, they painted a picture of two elderly people who seemed to have more disasters in a month than most people have in a year. I started testing the stories randomly, calling Robert and Linda under various pretenses. "Hey, how's Dad's shoulder after that fall? Did you get that computer issue sorted out? How much did the garage door repair end up costing?" Every single time, they had no idea what I was talking about. The worst part wasn't the lying. It was how effortless it seemed for her. Sarah would come home from these fictional family crises and regale me with detailed stories over dinner. She'd complain about her father's stubbornness, worry aloud about her mother's anxiety, even show me fake text messages she claimed Linda had sent thanking her for all the help. I realized I was living with a stranger. This woman I'd shared a bed with for 15 years, who knew my coffee order and remembered my birthday, and could make me laugh until my sides hurt. She was a complete mystery to me. How long had she been this good at deception? What else had she lied about? Had any of our marriage been real? The breaking point came on a cold Friday night in November. I'd had a brutal week on the job site. We were behind schedule on a downtown office renovation, the weather wasn't cooperating, and my crew was getting restless about overtime pay. All I wanted was to come home, order pizza, and spend a quiet evening with my wife. Instead, I got the call at 6:15 p.m., right as I was pulling into our driveway. "David, I'm so sorry, but I have to go to Mom and Dad's again. They're having some kind of family crisis and they really need me there tonight." Something in her voice was different this time. She sounded nervous, almost scared. For a split second, I wondered if maybe this time it was real. "What kind of crisis?" I asked. It's complicated. Family stuff. I can't really get into it over the phone, but they specifically asked me to come over tonight. I might be really late. Don't wait up for me." "Sarah, what's going on? You're scaring me." "Everything's fine, I promise. I just need to be there for them right now. We'll talk tomorrow, okay?" She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my truck in the driveway, engine running, staring at my phone. The nervous edge in her voice bothered me more than the usual smooth lies. Either she was getting sloppy or something really was wrong. I decided to find out which. 20 minutes later, I was standing on Robert and Linda's front porch, holding a 6-pack of beer and wearing my most casual smile. Linda answered the door in her bathrobe and slippers, looking surprised but pleased to see me. "David, what a nice surprise. Come in, come in." Robert's in his chair watching some cop show and complaining about how unrealistic it is. "Hey, Linda. Sorry to drop by unannounced, but I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by and see how you folks are doing." "You're always welcome. You know that. Can I get you something to eat?" I think there's leftover pot roast in the fridge. I'm fine, thanks. Actually, I brought some beer for Robert. Thought maybe we could watch the game together. Robert looked up from his recliner as we entered the living room. David, good to see you, son. What brings you by on a Friday night? Where's Sarah? She had to work late, I said, settling onto the couch. Big project deadline coming up. We made small talk for a few minutes. Robert's ongoing battle with the neighbor's dog, Linda's new recipe for apple crisp, the weather forecast for the weekend. Normal, comfortable conversation with two people I genuinely loved. People who had welcomed me into their family from day one, who treated me like the son they'd never had. People my wife was using as unwitting accomplices in her affair. Around 7:30, Linda excused herself to take a bath. Robert and I were halfway through our second beers when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Sarah. Phew, I made it to my parents. We're having a holiday dinner for our family anniversary. I'll be home late. Don't wait for me. I stared at the screen, reading the message twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Then I looked up at Robert, who was absorbed in some detective show, completely oblivious to the fact that his daughter was supposedly sitting in his dining room at that very moment. Robert? I said quietly. He glanced over, then noticed my expression. You okay, son? You look like you've seen a ghost. I held up my phone. I just got a text from Sarah. She says she's here with you and Linda, having some kind of family anniversary dinner. Robert's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, concern, and then something that looked like understanding mixed with dread. David, he started. She's not here, is she? No, son, she's not. We sat in silence for a moment. Robert muted the TV and leaned forward in his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 72 years. How long have you known? He asked. Known what exactly? That she's been lying about coming here. I let out a long breath. A few weeks, maybe a month. I started calling to check on the emergencies she kept rushing over to help with. And we never knew what you were talking about. Never. Robert rubbed his face with both hands. Jesus, David. I'm sorry. If we'd known she was using us as an excuse for whatever this is. It's not your fault. The hell it isn't. She's our daughter. We raised her better than this. Linda appeared in the doorway, wearing a fresh nightgown and looking concerned. What's wrong? You both look like someone died. Robert and I exchanged glances. I showed her the text message. Linda read it twice, just like I had. Then she sank into her chair, looking stricken. Oh, David. Honey, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. This isn't on you. But we should have known. We should have said something when you started calling about all those emergencies that never happened. You couldn't have known she was lying to me about where she was. Linda was quiet for a moment, then looked up with the expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of maternal disappointment and genuine anger. Where is she really? She asked. I pulled up the location-sharing app on my phone. Sarah had enabled it months ago during a girls' trip to Vegas, claiming it would make me feel better about her traveling alone. She'd apparently forgotten it was still active. According to the app, she was at Romano's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. The same restaurant where we'd had our anniversary dinner 3 years ago. The same restaurant where she'd told me the osso buco was the best she'd ever had and made me promise we'd come back for special occasions. I showed the screen to Robert and Linda. Romano's, Robert said grimly. That's not exactly a family restaurant. No, I agreed. It's not. Linda stood up suddenly. Get your coats. What? Get your coats. We're going to Romano's. Linda, I don't think that's a good idea. The hell it isn't. Her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. If our daughter wants to have a family dinner, then by God, we're going to join her. Robert was already reaching for his jacket. Linda's right. If Sarah's going to use us as an excuse for whatever she's doing, then we have a right to know what that is. I started to protest, but something in their faces stopped me. These weren't just concerned in-laws anymore. They were parents who had just discovered their daughter was lying, cheating, and dragging their names through the mud in the process. They had as much right to answers as I did. Maybe more. The drive to Romano's took 25 minutes in Friday night traffic. None of us said much during the trip. Linda sat in the passenger seat of my truck, staring out the window with her jaw set in a way that reminded me exactly where Sarah had gotten her stubborn streak. Robert sat in the back, occasionally muttering things under his breath that I was probably better off not hearing. I parked across the street from the restaurant and killed the engine. Through the large front windows, we could see the warm glow of candlelit tables and well-dressed couples enjoying their Friday night dinners. Somewhere in there was my wife, probably holding hands with some other man and spinning more lies about her fictional family crisis. "There," Linda said suddenly, pointing toward a table near the back of the restaurant. I followed her gaze and felt my stomach drop. Sarah was indeed inside, sitting at a corner table with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, dark-haired, probably in his 40s, wearing an expensive-looking suit. They were leaning toward each other across the table, and even from this distance, their body language screamed intimacy. As we watched, the man reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. She smiled, not the polite, social smile she used at work functions, but the genuine, radiant smile I remembered from our early dating days. The smile I hadn't seen, directed at me in months. "Son of a bitch," Robert muttered from the back seat. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Sarah. "We're here for your family dinner. Please turn around, because it feels wrong to keep staring at the back of your head." I hit send and watched through the window as Sarah's phone lit up on the table. She glanced at it casually, probably expecting a routine text from a friend or coworker. Then her face went white. She looked around the restaurant frantically, scanning the other tables as if expecting to find us sitting nearby. The man across from her said something, probably asking what was wrong. Sarah showed him the phone, and his expression shifted from concern to alarm. "She sees it," Linda said quietly. Sarah's head swiveled toward the front windows, and even from across the street, I could see the exact moment she spotted my truck. Her mouth fell open. The man followed her gaze, squinting through the glass. "Should we go in?" Robert asked. I was already getting out of the truck. Romano's had the kind of atmosphere that whispered money, soft lighting, white tablecloths, waiters in bow ties who moved like dancers between the tables. The hostess, a young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile, greeted us as we walked in. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "We're meeting someone," I said, scanning the restaurant. "My wife. She's already here." Sarah and her companion were at a corner table near the back, partially hidden by a decorative screen. As we approached, I could see Sarah's face clearly for the first time. She looked terrified. The man with her was younger than I'd initially thought, probably late 30s, with the kind of polished good looks that came from expensive grooming and regular gym memberships. He wore his confidence like a designer suit, but that confidence was rapidly evaporating as 3 uninvited guests approached his romantic dinner. "Hello, sweetheart," I said, pulling up an empty chair from a nearby table. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was murder." Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "David, how did you find you?" "Well, funny story. Your parents and I were just sitting around their living room, wondering why you hadn't shown up for this family anniversary dinner you texted me about, so we thought we'd come join you." The man across from her finally found his voice. "I'm sorry, but this is a private dinner. I think there's been some misunderstanding." "Oh, there's definitely been a misunderstanding," Linda said, settling into another chair with the regal bearing of a queen claiming her throne. "But not on our part." Robert remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back in a posture that somehow managed to be both casual and intimidating. "You must be the family crisis Sarah had to rush over to help with." Sarah finally managed to speak. Mom, Dad, please, this isn't what it looks like. Really? I asked, genuinely curious. Because it looks like you're on a date with another man while telling your husband you're having dinner with your parents. What does it look like to you? The man, I still didn't know his name, was looking around the restaurant like he was calculating escape routes. Look, I think maybe we should all calm down and discuss this privately. We are discussing it privately, Robert interrupted. This is as private as it gets. A waiter approached our table, clearly confused by the sudden expansion of the party. Can I get you folks anything to drink? 3 glasses of your best red wine, Linda said without taking her eyes off Sarah. We're celebrating. Celebrating what? Sarah asked weakly. The end of 15 years of marriage, I said. Seems like an occasion worth marking. The waiter retreated quickly, probably sensing that he'd wandered into a domestic situation that was well above his pay grade. Sarah's companion finally introduced himself. I'm Greg Ralston. I work with Sarah at Morrison Tech. Ah, I said, a co-worker. How nice that you two are so dedicated to your professional relationship. David, please, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Can we talk about this at home? Why? So you can come up with another story? Another family emergency that requires your immediate attention? I leaned back in my chair, surprised by how calm I felt. No, I think this is perfect. Your parents are here, your boyfriend is here, and I'm here. It's like a little family reunion. Greg was starting to look genuinely panicked. Sarah, maybe I should go. Oh, don't leave on our account, Linda said sweetly. We'd love to get to know the man our daughter has been spending so much time with. Tell us about yourself, Greg. Are you married? Greg's face flushed. That's not really relevant to... It's relevant to me, Robert said quietly. See, I raised my daughter to have some basic respect for the institution of marriage. Apparently I failed in that regard. But I'm curious about whether you're just a cheater or if you're also a home wrecker. Dad, stop, Sarah pleaded. I'm divorced, Greg said quickly. Have been for 2 years. Ah, I said. So you're familiar with how these things end. That's good. Maybe you can give Sarah some tips on finding a good lawyer. The waiter returned with 3 glasses of wine, set them down with shaking hands, and disappeared again. I could see other diners starting to notice our table, conversations pausing as people tried to figure out what was happening in the corner. Sarah finally seemed to find some of her composure. David, you're embarrassing yourself. And you're embarrassing me. I'm embarrassing you? I laughed, and it came out harsher than I'd intended. Sarah, you've been lying to me for months. You've been using your parents as alibis for your affair. You've been coming home to me every night after being with him, kissing me hello and asking about my day like nothing happened. And I'm embarrassing you? It's not an affair, she said desperately. Greg and I are just friends. Friends who hold hands over romantic dinners? We were discussing work. At 9 o'clock on a Friday night, at the restaurant where we celebrated our anniversary, while you told me you were having a family crisis. Greg cleared his throat. Maybe I should clarify something here. Sarah and I have been seeing each other for about 3 months. She told me she was separated. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah stared at Greg like he'd just set her on fire. Greg, don't... She said you two were getting divorced and she was just waiting for the paperwork to be finalized. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Separated. Interesting. Sarah, when exactly did we separate? Because I seem to have missed that conversation. Greg, please stop talking, Sarah hissed. But Greg was apparently past the point of caring about Sarah's comfort. She said you'd been living apart for months, that you were just keeping up appearances until the divorce was final. Living apart, I repeated. In the same house, in the same bed, having the same conversations every morning over coffee. Greg's face went through several shades of red and white. She She said, "She lied to you too," Linda said, almost gently. "Welcome to the club." I stood up, suddenly feeling exhausted. "Well, this has been educational. Sarah, when you're ready to have an honest conversation about our marriage, you know where to find me. Greg, good luck with whatever this turns out to be." I started to walk away, then turned back. "Oh, and Sarah? Next time you want to use your parents as an excuse for your affair, maybe check with them first. They worry when you don't show up for these fictional family emergencies." As we walked out of the restaurant, I could hear Sarah calling my name, but I didn't turn around. Robert and Linda flanked me like bodyguards, their faces grim with determination and disappointment. We didn't speak until we were back in the truck. "Where do you want us to take you?" I asked. "Home," Linda said. "We need to call our lawyer." "Your lawyer?" "Sarah's going to need one," Robert said grimly. "And so are you." The weekend that followed the restaurant confrontation was the strangest of my life. Sarah didn't come home Friday night, and she didn't come home Saturday either. She sent a series of increasingly frantic text messages, apologies, explanations, pleas for understanding, but I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I spent Saturday morning doing something I should have done months ago. I called a lawyer. Margaret Chen had handled the divorce for 3 of my crew members over the past 5 years. She was tough, practical, and had a reputation for getting her clients through the process with minimal drama and maximum protection of their assets. Her office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, all hardwood floors and antique furniture that somehow managed to be both elegant and intimidating. "So," she said, after I'd finished explaining the situation, "your wife has been having an affair for at least 3 months, possibly longer. She's been using her parents as alibis, and she told her boyfriend that you were already separated. Is that the summary?" "That's the summary. Do you want to try counseling first? Or are you ready to file for divorce?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on the betrayal, the lies, the humiliation, that I hadn't really considered whether our marriage was salvageable. "I don't know," I admitted. "A week ago, I thought we just had communication problems. Now I find out my wife has been living a double life for months. I'm not sure counseling can fix that level of deception." Margaret nodded. "In my experience, the lying is often harder to forgive than the cheating itself. Infidelity can sometimes be worked through, but rebuilding trust after systematic deception, that's much more difficult." "What are my options?" "Well, you have several advantages working in your favor. First, you have witnesses to her confession. Her parents heard the boyfriend confirm the affair. Second, you have documentation of her lies, the text messages claiming to be places she wasn't. Third, she's been stupid about it, meeting at public restaurants, using traceable alibis, involving co-workers. If she'd been smarter, this would be much harder to prove. So what do I do?" "That depends on what you want. Do you want to hurt her, or do you want to protect yourself?" I thought about that for a long moment. I want her to understand what she's done, not just to me, but to her parents, to our friends, to everyone who trusted her. Revenge can be expensive and time-consuming. It's usually better to focus on getting out clean. What if I could do both? Margaret leaned back in her chair, studying me with new interest. "What did you have in mind?" I told her about Sarah's job, her social circle, her carefully cultivated image as the perfect wife and daughter. I told her about the upcoming company Christmas party, where Sarah was supposed to receive some kind of achievement award. I told her about our mutual friends, most of whom had no idea what had been happening behind closed doors. "You want to expose her publicly," Margaret said. "I want people to know who she really is. That's risky. If you're not careful, you could end up looking vindictive. Judges don't like vindictive spouses." "What if she exposes herself?" Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Explain." I outlined my plan. It was simple, really. Sarah had built her affair on a foundation of lies and careful scheduling. All I had to do was disrupt that schedule in the right way, at the right time, and let her own deceptions collapse under their own weight. "It's not illegal," Margaret said after I'd finished. "It's not even unethical, technically. But it's definitely playing with fire. I've been playing with fire for 15 years. I just didn't know it." By Sunday afternoon, I was ready to implement phase 1 of what I'd started thinking of as Operation Family Dinner. I started with our mutual friends, the couples we'd socialized with, the people who'd been to our house for barbecues and holiday parties. I didn't tell them about the affair directly. Instead, I simply shared what had happened at Romano's, framing it as a funny misunderstanding that had revealed some communication issues in our marriage. "You should have seen Sarah's face when we walked into the restaurant," I told Mike and Jennifer Patterson over beers at O'Malley's. "She was having dinner with this guy from work, and she'd told me she was at her parents' house. Turns out she'd been covering for him because he was going through a rough divorce and didn't want people at the office to know he was dating again." It was a lie, but a believable one. The kind of lie that would spread through our social circle and eventually get back to Sarah, forcing her to either confirm it or contradict it with the truth. "That's weird," Jennifer said. "Why wouldn't she just tell you she was having dinner with a coworker?" That's what I asked her. Apparently she thought I'd be jealous or something, which is ridiculous because I trust her completely. Mike shook his head. "Women, they overthink everything." The funny part is her parents and I ended up joining them for dessert. Nice guy, actually. Greg something. He seemed pretty embarrassed about the whole thing. I had similar conversations with 4 other couples over the course of the week. Each time, I told a slightly different version of the story, always painting Sarah as well-intentioned but secretive, always mentioning Greg by name, always emphasizing how understanding I was being about the whole situation. By Wednesday, the gossip mill was in full swing. Sarah started getting questions at work.
"In my house! You bastard!"
Relax, man. It's just business.
Please, don't shoot!
Get off!
You won't do it. You don't have the guts.
Don't! Please don't shoot him! Please! I'm begging you! Don't do this! No! Please, no!
Casual inquiries about her friend Greg and whether everything was okay at home. Her carefully constructed compartmentalization was beginning to crumble. That's when she finally called me. "David, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere?" "Where?" "Romano's." I almost laughed. "Seriously?" "It's neutral ground. And I think I owe you a real explanation. You owe me a lot more than that. But sure. What time?" 7 o'clock? I'll be there." I arrived at Romano's 15 minutes early and asked for the same corner table where I'd found Sarah with Greg the previous Friday. The irony wasn't lost on me, and I suspected it wouldn't be lost on her either. She walked in at exactly 7 o'clock, looking like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. Her usual polished appearance was intact, but there were dark circles under her eyes and a tightness around her mouth that spoke of sleepless nights and difficult conversations. "Thank you for coming," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "Thank you for finally being honest about where you were going to be." She winced. "I deserved that." "You deserve a lot worse than that, but it's a start." The waiter approached, and we ordered drinks, wine for her, beer for me. The same drinks we'd ordered on our first date 16 years ago. I wondered if she remembered. "I need you to stop," she said, once the waiter had left. "Stop what?" "Stop telling people about Friday night. Stop making me look like an idiot at work. Stop whatever it is you're doing." "I'm not doing anything, Sarah. I'm just telling people the truth about what happened. You're not telling them the truth. You're telling them some sanitized version that makes me look like a liar and you look like a saint. Aren't you a liar? She was quiet for a long moment. Yes. And am I not handling this situation with remarkable patience and understanding? David, most husbands would have caused a scene at the restaurant. Most husbands would have thrown you out of the house that night. Most husbands would have called your boss and told him his employee was fucking a coworker on company time. Keep your voice down. Why? Afraid someone might overhear? Might realize that the perfect Sarah Morrison isn't quite as perfect as she pretends to be? Our drinks arrived. Sarah drained half her wine glass in one gulp. What do you want? She asked. I want you to tell me the truth. All of it. How long has this been going on? How many other lies have you told me? How many other men have there been? There haven't been any other men. And it's been 3 months, like Greg said. 3 months of lying to me every single day. Yes. 3 months of using your parents as unwitting accomplices. Yes. 3 months of coming home to me after being with him. She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. And you told him we were separated. Yes. Why? Because I was going to ask you for a separation. I was working up the courage to have that conversation. By having an affair first. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you're a coward. It sounds like you wanted to have your cake and eat it too. It sounds like you were hedging your bets in case things didn't work out with Greg. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streaks. You're right. You're absolutely right. I handled this in the worst possible way. Yes, you did. So what happens now? I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. Even crying, even with her makeup ruined, she was still beautiful. Still the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But she was also a stranger, someone capable of deceptions I'd never imagined. Now you get to live with the consequences, I said. I've filed for divorce. You'll be served with papers tomorrow. Her face went white. David, please. Can't we try counseling? Can't we try to work this out? You should have thought about that before you started fucking Greg. I'll end it with him. I'll quit my job if I have to. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. You can't fix it, Sarah. You broke something that can't be repaired. Please. I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love having a stable home to come back to after your adventures. You love having someone to lie to, but you don't love me. I stood up, threw a 20 on the table, and walked away. Behind me I could hear Sarah sobbing, but I didn't turn around. Phase 1 was complete. Phase 2 was going to be much more interesting. The divorce papers were served to Sarah at her office the next morning, in full view of her coworkers, and more importantly, Greg Ralston. According to my friend Derek, who worked security at Morrison Tech, the scene was spectacular. She opened the envelope right there at her desk, Derek told me over lunch. Soon as she saw what it was, she went white as a sheet, started shaking so bad she could barely hold the papers. Then that Greg guy comes over, probably thinking he's going to comfort her, and she just loses it on him. Starts screaming about how this is all his fault, how he ruined her life, how she wishes she'd never met him. In front of everyone? Half the office. Security had to escort her out. Word is she's taking a leave of absence. I felt a grim satisfaction hearing this, but it was tempered by something that might have been pity. Sarah had always prided herself on her professionalism, her ability to keep her personal life separate from work. Having her private drama explode in the office like that must have been devastating. But then I remembered the months of lies, the elaborate deceptions, the way she'd used her parents as unwitting accomplices, and the pity evaporated. The real fireworks started that weekend, at Mike and Jennifer Patterson's annual Halloween party. It was one of those suburban social events that Sarah and I had attended every year since we'd moved to the neighborhood. Costume party, potluck dinner, too much wine, and gossip that would fuel conversations until Christmas. Sarah didn't show up, which was probably wise, but Greg did. I almost didn't recognize him at first. He was dressed as a pirate, complete with an eye patch and a fake sword, talking to a group of people I didn't know near the bar. It took me a moment to realize he was telling them about his crazy ex-girlfriend who had completely lost her mind when he tried to break up with her. She actually had her husband served with divorce papers and tried to blame it on me, he was saying, gesturing with his beer bottle for emphasis. Like, lady, I'm not the one who decided to cheat on your marriage. I walked over to the group, carrying my own beer and wearing my best friendly smile. Excuse me, I said to Greg. Aren't you the guy who was having dinner with my wife last week? The conversation stopped dead. Greg's face went through several interesting color changes. I think there might be some confusion. No confusion at all. You're Greg Ralston, right? From Morrison Tech? You told me and my in-laws that my wife had told you she was separated. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. No trouble at all. I just thought these folks might be interested to know that the crazy ex-girlfriend you were just talking about is actually my wife, who, as you correctly noted, was never actually separated from me when you two started your relationship. The group was staring at Greg like he'd grown a second head. One of the women, dressed as a witch, looked particularly disgusted. So you were having an affair with a married woman, she said. It's not that simple. Sounds pretty simple to me, said one of the men. Married woman, single guy, secret dinners. That's pretty much the definition of an affair. She told me she was getting divorced. But she wasn't, I pointed out helpfully. She was lying to both of us, though in my case, she was lying about a lot more than just her marital status. Greg was looking around the group like a trapped animal. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to stand here and be judged by a bunch of strangers. You're absolutely right, I said. You should probably go find some people who don't know you're the kind of guy who sleeps with other men's wives. He stormed off, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. The group I'd been talking to immediately started buzzing with conversation, and I knew the story would be all over the party within the hour. Mission accomplished. But the best part of the evening was still to come. Around 10 o'clock, just as the party was starting to wind down, my phone rang. It was Sarah. David, please, you have to stop this. Stop what? You know what? The gossip, the rumors, turning everyone against me. I'm not turning anyone against you, Sarah. I'm just not covering for you anymore. I hung up and turned off my phone, not because I was scared of what she might say next, but because I finally understood that every second I stayed connected to her voice, I stayed connected to her version of reality, and her reality was designed to soften knives into feathers. The kitchen was quiet in that way only an emptied marriage could manage, with the refrigerator humming like a bored witness and the clock ticking like a gavel that had never learned mercy. I stood at the sink and watched streetlights spill through the blinds in thin stripes, and I thought about the Pattersons' party, about Greg's flushed face when he realized his just friends story couldn't survive a single follow-up question, and about Sarah's panic when she understood I wasn't going to play the role of confused husband for the comfort of strangers. It wasn't the humiliation that bothered her, not really. It was the loss of control. She could handle guilt in private if it stayed sealed, could handle betrayal as long as it wore perfume and had an exit strategy, but she couldn't handle the public shape of the truth, because truth is ugly when it finally stands up straight. Greg called her like a little boy runs to a teacher after getting punched for stealing lunch money, and she called me like I was the one who'd broken the rules. That was the pattern, and I could see it clearly now. She created the fire, then asked me to apologize for the smoke. I walked through the house slowly, turning off lights I didn't need, checking rooms I had no reason to check, the way a man patrols a perimeter after the first breach. Her sweater was still on the back of a chair, like she'd stepped away for a moment, and would return to finish a conversation we both knew was over. There were 2 mugs in the dishwasher, one with lipstick still ghosting the rim, and I felt something cold move behind my ribs, not anger exactly, but the tight, clinical recognition of evidence. I had been living inside a crime scene without calling it one, and now I was done pretending it was just a rough patch that would heal with time and soft words. I opened the drawer where we kept bills and warranties and old instruction manuals, and I pulled out the folder I'd started weeks ago, the one I hadn't told anyone about because I needed it to be real before I let it breathe air. Inside were printouts, screenshots, dates, times, and receipts, the kind of boring paperwork that ends marriages more effectively than screaming does. There was the credit card charge from that boutique hotel across town that she claimed was a work seminar, except no seminars charged by the hour, and no seminars came with champagne service at midnight. There was the text thread that started with, "Are you alone?" and ended with, "Same place as last time," and there was a calendar entry labeled Mom that conveniently appeared every time Greg's name appeared in the phone bill. Her parents weren't just alibis, they were cover, and I wondered if they would feel used when they learned what they'd been protecting, or if they would instinctively protect her anyway, because some families treat daughters like holy relics even when they're sharp enough to cut. I set the folder on the table and stared at it until the lines blurred, because part of me still wanted the old story, the one where love was a shared project, and mistakes were accidents you fixed together. But there are mistakes, and there are choices, and Sarah had chosen Greg the way someone chooses a shortcut, fully aware of the map and uninterested in the consequences. She didn't want to be married to me, not really. She wanted the stability of me, the reputation of me, the logistical comfort of me, while she took her thrills elsewhere like a thief who still expects the house to be warm when she returns. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm, because betrayal teaches your nervous system new habits, and sleep becomes something you borrow in small, uneasy installments. I made coffee and drank it black, standing at the counter like I was waiting for a verdict. My phone stayed off, face down, silent, and the silence felt better than any apology I'd heard in months. I dressed slowly, choosing a shirt that didn't wrinkle and shoes that didn't squeak, because if I was going to end this, I was going to end it clean. I didn't need theatrics. I needed closure that couldn't be negotiated. By mid-morning, I was in my car, parked across from Greg's office building, watching people come and go with the casual innocence of strangers who didn't know they were part of a story. Greg worked in one of those glass and steel places where everyone looks busy even when they're just moving between meetings, where the lobby smells like expensive soap and weak ambition. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I was there to confirm something I already knew, that Greg had always planned to keep his hands clean while Sarah bled out her marriage for him. He came out for lunch, alone, scanning the sidewalk like he expected applause or danger, and for a second he looked exactly like what he was, a man who wanted the benefits of someone else's devotion without paying the cost. He spotted me, froze, then forced a laugh that never reached his eyes. He walked toward me like we were old friends, like he could charm the situation back into something polite. "Man," he said, flashing that practiced grin. "Didn't expect to see you." "I didn't expect to see you either," I said, and my voice sounded calm, which surprised me, because calm is what happens when you've already finished grieving. But here we are. He glanced around, as if searching for witnesses, because men like Greg don't fear consequences until there's an audience. "Look, about last night." "Don't," I said, and it wasn't loud, but it landed. "I'm not here to discuss your feelings about being embarrassed." His grin tightened. "Sarah's really upset." "Sarah's been upset ever since the truth started behaving like truth," I said. "That's not my problem." He tried to shift into moral posture, the way cowards do when their image is threatened. "You didn't have to do that at the party." "I didn't have to do anything," I said. "I chose to stop lying for her." His eyes flicked, a micro-movement, a little tell, like he was calculating the odds of me doing something rash. You're angry, he said, like naming it would tame it. I'm not angry, I said. I'm done. That word bothered him because done meant he couldn't negotiate. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're going to ruin her. I laughed, but it was a thin sound. She ruined herself, you just held the door. He bristled, because men like Greg hate being described accurately. You don't know what you're talking about. I know enough, I said. I know she used her parents as alibis. I know she lied to my face. I know she chose you, and you let her, because it made you feel important. His jaw clenched. You're making this bigger than it is. That was the sentence that told me everything, because to him, the wreckage of another man's life was just not that big, as long as it didn't splash his shoes. It's big to the person you're stepping on, I said, but you wouldn't know anything about that. He stared at me like he wanted to say something cutting, but all he had were recycled lines and the weak courage of a man who'd never been held accountable. What do you want? He finally asked. I want you to understand something, I said, and I leaned in just enough for him to smell the coffee on my breath, just enough for it to feel personal. This doesn't end with Sarah crying on my voicemail and you pretending you're the victim of social inconvenience. This ends with consequences, real ones. His eyes narrowed. Are you threatening me? I'm describing reality, I said. Sarah's choices have paperwork attached to them now. He swallowed, and I could see the shift the moment he realized I wasn't there to fight. I was there to finalize. Listen, he said, softer now. We didn't plan. You never plan the damage, I said. You plan the pleasure. I stepped back, and I let the space between us return, because I wasn't interested in his proximity. Tell Sarah, I said, that the next time she calls me, it won't be to negotiate. It'll be to coordinate logistics, because that's all we have left. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't, because argument requires a foundation, and his was built on sand. I turned and walked away without rushing, because rushing looks like fear, and I wasn't afraid anymore. In the car, I didn't turn my phone on. I didn't need her voice. I needed action. When I got home, I opened the folder again and added one more note, a simple line with the time and place of the conversation, because details matter when lies start to unravel. Then I sat at the table and stared at the pen in my hand, realizing that the next steps were not emotional, not dramatic, not cinematic, but procedural. Divorce is a slow machine. It grinds through paperwork and schedules and formal language until even the most romantic memories are reduced to assets and liabilities. And somewhere in that grind, if you're lucky, you find your dignity again. I turned my phone back on, not to read her messages, but to confirm there were no emergencies, no fires that were actually mine. The notifications piled in like junk mail, missed calls, pleading texts, a long voicemail I didn't listen to. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. I typed one message and kept it short, because clarity doesn't require poetry. From now on, email only. We'll handle this through attorneys. Then I put the phone down, closed the folder, and looked at the quiet house like it was no longer a tomb, but a blank page. Outside, the day moved forward without caring about my private apocalypse. And that was strangely comforting. The world didn't stop for betrayal. It just waited for you to decide what you were going to do with what was left. The Morrison Tech Christmas party was held at the grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel, the same venue where Sarah and I had attended our friends' weddings, anniversary celebrations, and charity galas over the years. It was the kind of elegant affair that Sarah loved, an opportunity to dress up, network with important people, and bask in the admiration of her colleagues. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have been invited. Spouses were welcome, but I'd always found these corporate events tedious and had usually found excuses to skip them. This year, however, I'd received a personal invitation from Derek, who'd been promoted to head of security and apparently had some pull with the guest list. "You should come," he'd said when he called. "Sarah's supposed to receive some big award for the Henderson project. Should be interesting, given everything that's happened." I almost said no. The divorce proceedings were moving forward smoothly, and I'd been trying to focus on rebuilding my life rather than dwelling on the wreckage of my marriage. But something about the idea of Sarah receiving accolades for her professional achievements while her personal life was in shambles appealed to my sense of irony. So I rented a tux, bought a ticket, and showed up at the grand ballroom on a cold December evening, ready to watch my soon-to-be ex-wife's moment of triumph. The ballroom was decorated with white lights and silver garland, round tables covered in crisp linens, and a small stage at the front where the company's executives would presumably hand out awards and make speeches about corporate synergy. I found my assigned table near the back of the room and settled in to watch the show. Sarah was sitting at a table near the front, dressed in a stunning black evening gown that I recognized from our anniversary dinner 2 years ago. She looked beautiful, poised, and utterly miserable. Greg was nowhere to be seen. According to Derek, he'd transferred to the company's Phoenix office the week after the Halloween party incident. The evening proceeded predictably for the first hour. Cocktails, dinner, speeches from various executives about the company's successful year and bright future. I found myself oddly nostalgic, remembering similar events from earlier in our marriage when Sarah would come home excited about her projects and colleagues, when I'd been proud of her ambition and success. Then came the awards ceremony. "Our next award," announced the company president, a silver-haired man named Harrison, "goes to someone who exemplifies the values of integrity, dedication, and teamwork that make Morrison Tech a leader in our industry." I could see Sarah straightening in her chair, smoothing her dress, preparing for her moment of recognition. This year's Excellence in Project Management Award goes to Sarah Morrison for her outstanding work on the Henderson account. Polite applause filled the room as Sarah rose from her table and walked toward the stage. She looked radiant under the spotlights, every inch the successful professional woman she'd worked so hard to become. She accepted the crystal trophy from Harrison, stepped up to the microphone, and began her acceptance speech. "Thank you so much for this honor. When I started the Henderson project 18 months ago, I knew it would be challenging, but I never imagined how rewarding it would be. This award belongs not just to me, but to my entire team, who worked tirelessly to exceed our clients' expectations." She paused, scanning the room with practiced confidence. "I also want to thank my family, who supported me through the long hours and difficult decisions that this project required. My parents, Robert and Linda Morrison, who taught me the value of hard work and integrity." I felt a cold smile spreading across my face. This was perfect. And my husband, David Barnes, who understood when I had to work late, when I had to miss dinners and family events, when I had to prioritize my career over our personal time together. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Sarah was literally thanking me for understanding her absences, the same absences she'd been using to conduct her affair with Greg. "Marriage is a partnership," she continued, "and I couldn't have achieved this success without a partner who trusted me completely, who never questioned my commitment to excellence, who supported my decisions even when they required sacrifice from both of us." I started laughing. Not loudly, but audibly enough that a few people at nearby tables turned to look at me. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of what she was saying, the complete disconnect between her public words and private actions, was genuinely funny. Sarah's eyes found me in the crowd, and for a moment her composure faltered. She saw me laughing, saw the expression on my face, and suddenly understood exactly what I was thinking. "Trust," she said, her voice slightly shaky now, "is the foundation of any successful relationship, whether it's marriage or business. When people trust you, when they believe in your integrity, you have a responsibility to honor that trust." She was looking directly at me now, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. I hope I've lived up to that responsibility. I hope I've proven myself worthy of the trust that's been placed in me." Her voice broke on the last word. She stood at the podium for a moment, holding her crystal trophy, staring at me across the crowded ballroom with tears streaming down her face. Then she walked off the stage and out of the room. The audience sat in confused silence for a moment before Harrison returned to the microphone and moved on to the next award. I finished my drink, stood up, and walked out of the ballroom. I found Sarah in the hotel lobby, sitting on a leather couch near the fireplace, still holding her trophy and crying quietly. "Congratulations," I said, settling into the chair across from her. "Don't." "No, really. That was quite a speech. Very moving, especially the part about trust and integrity. I know what you're thinking. Do you? You're thinking I'm a hypocrite, that I have no right to talk about trust after what I did. Actually, I was thinking how sad it is that you got exactly what you wanted: professional recognition, career success, the admiration of your colleagues, and you can't enjoy any of it because you destroyed everything else in your life to get it." She looked up at me, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "I didn't destroy everything to get this award." "Didn't you? You worked late nights that you spent with Greg. You missed dinners that you never intended to attend. You prioritized your career over our marriage, but not in the way you just described to that room full of people. It wasn't about the career. It was about— I don't know what it was about. It was about wanting something different from what you had, something exciting, something that made you feel alive again. I get that, Sarah. I really do. Then why are you doing this to me? I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just not protecting you from the consequences of your choices anymore." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup further. "What happens now? Now you figure out how to live with what you've done. You figure out whether that trophy was worth 15 years of marriage. You figure out whether Greg was worth losing your family. And what about you?" I stood up, straightening my jacket. "I figure out how to be happy without you." I walked toward the hotel exit, then turned back for one final look at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, sitting alone in the lobby with her professional achievement and her personal ruins. "Oh, and Sarah? Next time you want to thank someone for understanding your absences, maybe make sure they actually understood what you were absent for." I left her there and walked out into the cold December night, feeling lighter than I had in months. 3 weeks later, our divorce was finalized. Sarah moved back in with her parents temporarily, then found an apartment across town. She kept her job at Morrison Tech, though she never received another major award. Greg stayed in Phoenix and, according to mutual acquaintances, married his secretary 6 months later. I kept the house, split our assets according to the prenup Sarah had insisted on when we got married, and started dating again for the first time in 16 years. Robert and Linda Morrison sent me a Christmas card that year, and every year since. The message was always the same. Thank you for showing us who our daughter really was. We're sorry it took so long. I never responded to Sarah's attempts to contact me after the divorce was final. There was nothing left to say. She'd made her choices, lived with the consequences, and learned that some betrayals can't be forgiven or forgotten. As for me, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. Sometimes it's simply refusing to cover for someone's lies and letting them face the truth about themselves. Sarah had wanted a family dinner after all. She just hadn't realized that family dinners sometimes include uncomfortable conversations about trust, integrity, and the price of deception. In the end, she got exactly what she'd asked for.